Slide titled NCATS Budget Brief, Fiscal Year 2025. Joni Rutter, Director, NCATS. Andy Kelly, Budget Officer, NCATS. March 19th, 2024, 1 o'clock to 1:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank all of you for joining us today for this public briefing of the NCATS budget, and to tell you a little bit more about what we're doing even beyond the budget briefing itself. And so some housekeeping I wanted to mention before we get started is that we will be recording this 30-minute meeting, and it will be posted to our website. Since it is a public meeting, we want to make sure that those who weren't able to make it today do have an opportunity to take a look at it at another time. So we will be recording this session. And as we begin, I would like to, first of all, start by sharing some of the, what I think are very exciting updates from our leadership perspective. We've made a lot of changes in our leadership over the past year. And so we will go through our agenda. We'll talk about some of the updates on the leadership side. And then I will turn it over to our NCATS budget officer, Andy Kelly, who you can see possibly on the screen now. Andy, take a wave. And Andy will be providing a brief overview of the NCATS budget, at least as to what we know to date. There are still a little bit of uncertainties out there, but I'm hoping that he can help clarify as much as possible today. And he'll give you a little bit more context behind what's happening in that budget process. And then after that budget briefing, I will then touch on some future plans that we're considering here at NCATS.
Strategic Plan Update.
And then we'll save some time at the end for any open questions that you might have from the audience side. And we would love for you to go ahead and enter those into the Q&A box. And Penny Burgoon will be monitoring that Q&A box and then relaying any of those questions back to us. So with that, I think we can go ahead and move on. But I also, actually, if you could go back one, Brittany, I should take a moment to just recognize that it was Rare Disease Day last month, February 29th, the rarest of all rare disease days, because it was a leap year this year. So I have a few pictures up here that I wanted to highlight.
Images include the Rare Disease Day at NIH logo, February 29th, 2024, hashtag RDDNIH. A photo of NIH's Building 1 with multicolor front porch lighting. A photo of Dr. Joni Rutter posing with a person in a zebra costume. Screenshot from the videocast of the White House Rare Disease Forum.
We often do, or every year that I've been in this position, we have done the Light Up for Rare ceremony at the NIH, where we light up Building 1, which is the signature building on the main campus of NIH. And we also light up another building on campus because it's much taller and you can see it from the road. It's a special event that we have to really raise awareness that it's Rare Disease Day, and celebrating that for folks, not just within the NIH, but also around the world. On our Rare Disease Day too, you see a few photos here of some the zebra mascot on Rare Disease Day. And then just prior to that event, we had a White House event to talk about rare disease awareness as well. Really excited to have the Biden-Harris administration have the White House event on rare disease as a forum to talk about some of the policy issues and the research programs that are out there to date. And then we also had our NCATS Alliance visited us at the NCATS Labs, along with our HMC partners as well, who were also able to visit us. And so we were really excited to have them there. And that's a picture right in front of our robots in our screening lab.
Image not visible.
And so I wanted to just highlight those photos as some of the other activities that we do in stakeholder engagement for NCATS. So now let's go ahead and go to the next slide.
Slide titled New NCATS Leadership depicts an organizational chart. At the top of the tree is a square titled Office of the Director, which includes the Deputy Director, Chief Scientific Diversity Officer, and Chief of Staff. Branching from the left side of the Office of the Director square is the Council CAN Board and the Common Fund. Branching from the right side of the Office of the Director square is HEAL and COVID-19. Branching from the bottom of the Office of the Director square are 10 smaller squares for the following offices and divisions: the Division of Extramural Activities, the Office of Administrative Management, the Office of Policy, Communications, and Education, the Office of Strategic Alliances, and the Office of Translational Medicine, the Division of Preclinical Innovation, the Division of Rare Disease Research Innovation, the Division of Clinical Innovation, the Office of Drug Development Partnership Programs, and the Office of Special Initiatives.
And this is just an overview of the org chart. Now, org charts are not that exciting when we show them here, but I did want to highlight that some of these areas of lighter blue shown here on the background are areas where we have brought in new leadership.
NCATS offices with new leadership positions include the Chief Scientific Diversity Officer in the Office of the Director, the Chief of Staff in the Office of the Director, the Director in the Office of Strategic Alliances, the Scientific Director in the Division of Preclinical Innovation, and the Director of the Division of Rare Disease Research Innovation.
At NCATS. And so I just wanted to take a moment to recognize all the different faces that you may see over the course of the year.
Slide depicting photos of 7 new leadership staff members, including Anton Simeonov, PhD, NCATS Acting Deputy Director, Janita Pritchett-Clay, PhD, Chief Scientific Diversity Officer, Ashley Parker, PhD, Chief of Staff, Matthew Hall, PhD, Scientific Director, Division of Preclinical Innovation, Dominique Pitchard, MD, Director, Division of Rare Disease Research Innovation, Balki Balakrishnan, PhD, Director, Office of Strategic Alliances, and Josh Fessel, MD, PhD, Director, Office of Translational Medicine.
From the NCATS leadership perspective, I won't necessarily go through everyone's name here, but I wanted you to take note of the names of particular individuals and what their roles are at NCATS. And this is also in the background of a very robust leadership program at NCATS. And if you click on the next slide, we'll fill in the rest of the names here and faces on this org chart. So,
slide depicting the photos of all leadership staff members. Staff that are not among the 7 new leadership staff members but are depicted on the slide include Anna Ramsey Ewing, PhD, Director of the Division of Extramural Activities, Keith Lamarand, MBA, Executive Officer of the Office of Administrative Management, Penny Burgoon, PhD, Office of Policy, Communications, and Education, Michael Kurilla, MD, PhD, Director of the Division of Clinical Innovation, Christine Colvis, PhD, Director for the Office of Drug Development Partnership Programs, Danilo Tegel, PhD, Director of the Office of Special Initiatives.
Over the course of the work that we do at NCATS, you may hear a variety of these different folks talk about workshops or programs that we're doing at NCATS, especially at our council meetings or otherwise. And so I wanted to just make sure that you were familiar with the new faces and the faces that have been here a while. We're all here as the part of the leadership of NCATS, and we're here to help answer any questions that you all have. So let's move on to the next slide, which is kind of why we're all here today, and that's to hear about the budget briefing, what we have to date. And for that, I will turn it over to Andy Kelly. So Andy, why don't you introduce yourself and then proceed.
Slide titled Fiscal Year 2025 NCATS President's Budget, depicting a bar graph titled Funding History and a pie chart titled NCATS Budget Distribution. The bar graph shows that in fiscal year 2021, the NCATS Budget Authority reported $852.9 million. In fiscal year 2022, $882.3 million. In fiscal year 2023, $923.3 million. In fiscal year 2024, $923.3 million, not yet finalized, continuing resolution. And the President's budget in 2025 is $926.1 million, plus a budget increase of $2.8 million, or 0.3%.
Thanks, Joni. So I am Andy Kelly. I'm NCATS Budget Officer. And so we will be talking today about the FY25 NCATS President's Budget. So we are currently still in FY24, and we don't yet have a budget for FY24. There has been lots of news over the last couple of hours, even, a couple of days, that we should have one very soon. But we are currently operating on a continuing resolution through Friday, and with the hope of a full year appropriation to come out soon. So yes, we are almost 50% of the way through the year. I guess not ideal, but also not unheard of. It's something that we experience from time to time as kind of really prolonged stretches on the CR. So for the FY25 President's Budget that came out last Monday, the scenario that we essentially assumed, because we did not have that FY24 budget, was to just put FY24 at a flat level to our FY23 enacted appropriation. And the FY25 request is for a 0.3% budget increase, which is about $2.8 million for NCATS. So the NCATS budget will continue to be broken down into CTSA and essentially all other components. CTSA is about 69% of the NCATS budget, and the all other is about 31%. And the request for FY25 is to essentially increase both of those components proportionally. And so it would be a 0.3%. Getting that extra zero there would be bad, but yes, 0.3% budget increase for both components in FY25. So you can reach that full budget document. It's about 30 pages long. Lots of different tables, but also lots of great text about what we would do with that budget level. Just by essentially, you can always put into your favorite search engine, NCATS budget. You can get that QR code from the bottom right-hand corner of the screen.
Visit https://ncats.nih.gov/about/budget for more information.
And go ahead and check it out. I think that's it for I guess to move on to the research priorities, which I think is going to be back to Joni.
Okay, yeah.
Slide titled NCATS Research Priorities. A four-square chart is depicted titled Fiscal Year 25 NCATS Budget, $926.1 million, plus $2.8 million, or plus 0.3% over fiscal year 23.
I'll just provide a little bit of color underneath what that budget kind of can translate back into. And so in the president's budget, NCATS really, we plan to maintain a deep focus on the research areas that you're probably somewhat familiar with, but these are all outlined within our congressional justification. And so the main four areas that are outlined in that congressional justification fall under these particular headings: the clinical and translational science activities on the upper left, the rare disease research and therapeutics on the upper right, Cures Acceleration Network on the lower left, and then re-engineering the translational sciences on the lower right. And so I wanted to give a little bit more sort of clarity around those topics and talk a little bit more about what we're doing in this space and the opportunities that we have in front of us that were relayed in the congressional justification, so that you have a little bit more to go on here. So I'll start with the clinical and translational science activities. These are the CTSA awards, and here we have $631.5 million proposed over which is, as Andy mentioned, 0.3% over FY23,
or $1.9 million.
And currently we have about 64 CTSA programs. This work also includes the Trial Innovation Network, the collaborative networks, and our training programs. And so we will continue to maintain all of the work in this space. And obviously, this is a point where there's of course always more that we can do in this space, but I think effectively providing the infrastructure for clinical research and clinical trials, this is exactly what the CTSAs do so well. They work within their local institutions, they work within their regional communities, and then also work very well together nationally. And certainly a lot of that has been really exemplified over the course of the pandemic. Also over the course of what they've contributed to within the other epidemic that we know a lot about, which is the opioid epidemic. They play a pretty large role in helping end addiction long-term in some of the programs they're in. And they're also now also a part of a variety of other programs, like working on the Long COVID, the Recover program, and participating in some of those activities as well. So the work that they do and they provide within the larger ecosystem is incredibly important. So I wanted to just mention all of that work there, because in the background of all that too, they're training the next generation of scientists to work in the clinical and translational science space. On the right-hand side, focusing a little bit more on the rare disease research and therapeutics. Here we have a very similar kind of flagship program called the Rare Disease Clinical Research Network, or RDCRN is the acronym for that. This is a group of 20 different programs across the country that study at least 3 different rare diseases within one award. Most of those RDCRN awards support at least about 9 on average rare diseases within those awards. They do everything from natural history studies, clinical trial readiness programs, biomarker development, and even clinical trials as well. So they're incredibly important for the work that they do for rare diseases. And I like to think of them as really the transformative engine behind rare diseases. In addition, we have other programs that help rare disease communities get ready to prepare for clinical trials in the rare disease space. Because rare diseases are rare in any particular disease. Collectively, they're common, but in any individual disease, they can be very rare. And so the numbers of patients that would be available for clinical trials might be quite small. And for that reason, we want to ensure that we're doing what we can to learn how we can innovate around clinical trials, thinking about innovative designs like basket trial designs or umbrella designs, adaptive trial designs, et cetera. So that's the work that we're doing in this space, in addition to supporting research in helping these communities get ready for clinical trial programs that they could be supporting. So this is a very important work in the rare disease space.
The budget for rare diseases research and therapeutics is $55.9 million, plus $0.2 million, or 0.3% over fiscal year 23.
And then on the lower left-hand side, we have the Cures Acceleration Network. The Cures Acceleration Network is about $66.2 million for the work that we've done in FY23, FY25, and what's being proposed over the FY23 program, again at 0.3%.
Or $0.2 million.
And here again, we will continue to support the activities that we're very deeply embedded in: gene therapy, gene editing programs, tissue chips, and the biomedical data translator, as well as programs that are looking at how we can bring more of the artificial intelligence and machine learning information to some of the development of new therapeutics. And so the wet labs of doing all the medicinal chemistry and toxicity studies, combining that with more of the dry lab side on computer programming and artificial intelligence and machine learning. So really bringing the dry lab environment with the wet lab environment, making that a little bit more automated so we can identify potential therapeutics that we can be testing faster, better, and more effectively. So that's the goal of the Aspire program. And the other programs here in the space are areas that we've been involved with for some time, but they're now at a stage where we're elevating them to the next level and pushing the boundaries on moving them forward. On the right-hand side, reengineering translational sciences. This is another big area for NCATS. Largely our intramural programs, primarily supported under this space, as well as other programs as well on the extramural side. And here we focus a lot on the platform-based approaches in terms of sort of the idea that NCATS is not specifically focused on any one organ or disease. It's focused on all over 10,000 rare diseases and all diseases for that matter. So platform-based approaches help us to raise all boats to really get at how we can support the research that's needed for as many diseases as we can. We're also working on developing predictive models using tissue chips, 3D bioprinting, and other kinds of digital-based approaches, digital twins, in silico models, et cetera, for advancing our understanding of how we can develop predictive models to help us facilitate and advance the translational science pipeline better, faster, and more effectively. And then lastly, drug repurposing. We spend a lot of time in this space doing a high throughput screening on existing therapeutics that have FDA approval or existing compounds that have FDA approval. We know quite a bit about their safety, but perhaps an indication hasn't quite been identified yet. And so through drug repurposing efforts, we can move that that development of a therapeutic from the time it typically takes, which is about 10 to 15 years. We might be able to cut that in half if we can find ways to do drug repurposing with existing compounds that have an FDA approval because of their safety profile. And that can help us shorten that time frame. So that's another area that we're focusing on there.
The budget for re-engineering translational science is $172.5 million plus $0.5 million or 0.3% over fiscal year 23.
So with that, those are the key areas that we're focusing on now, where we'll be moving forward in this congressional justification budget request. So I wanted to give you a little bit of color behind there. And if you go to the next slide, I also just wanted to briefly mention
slide titled NCATS Strategic Plan, depicting a chain of events. From left to right, the events are initial engagement, build a draft framework for the plan, more engagement, gather feedback on the draft framework, draft the strategic plan and discuss at May 2024 Council, and finalize the strategic plan. The penultimate step, draft the strategic plan and discuss at May 2024 Council, is circled in yellow to indicate that is the current step in the process.
That we have also been in this past year, we've been going through an NCATS strategic planning process that has been incredibly robust. And I hope that many of you on this call have been able to participate in those formal meetings that we've had. We actually had a couple of different public-facing meetings.
There were over 44 formal meetings.
But we've also had a couple of informal meetings with different constituents that we've been speaking to over the course of our workshops and programs that we've done before. Through this process, we've engaged 1,150 individuals. We have over 1,700 unique comments that we've been looking at, screening and vetting, and incorporating into our finalized strategic plan. And we had a request for information where we received over 50 responses for that as well. And so we're now at the stage of finalizing that draft strategic plan, and we'll be presenting it to our council members in our May council. So another couple of months for that. And I hope that you're all able to participate or at least listen in if you're able on the video cast to hear a little bit more of that update when we present that. And then once that's presented, we will take any input from our council, finalize that feedback, and then roll out our strategic plan shortly thereafter. If you'd like to follow along, there's a QR code here on the right where we have our website that talks about our strategic plan.
Visit https://ncats.nih.gov/NCATS-overview/strategic-plan.
And of course, this is a plan where we expect to be very much looking at this plan frequently. A watched pot never boils, so we probably won't look at it every single minute, but we will look at it frequently and understand how we're doing on that plan. And if you have thoughts or ideas along the way, please reach out to us over the course of the next 5 years that we will be doing this plan at NCATS 2024 strategic plan at mail.nih.gov. And then a little bit more insight on the next slide, just to give you a sense of the comments that we've received.
Slide titled Common Ground and Feedback Among Communities.
I wanted to show you this sort of spaghetti diagram where we've engaged with the different communities through our NCATS roundtables, our public roundtables, our NCATS communities, which make up a large stakeholder group of communities, our CTSA programs and our rare disease programs. we've engaged these communities, and each of those engagements gave us very different kinds of feedback. But interestingly, they all kind of fell into these buckets on the right-hand side, to focus on data science, for example, collaborations and partnership, community engagement, and that sort of thing. And so what we've done is we've taken the liberty of putting these into different, what I would call goals. We've turned these into goals for our strategic plan. So if you click on the next slide, you animate this, and each of these particular topics have fallen into a particular goal that we have now identified and are pushing forward. And so the next slide just shows you an update.
Slide titled NCATS Strategic Plan Framework. NCATS's vision is more treatments for all people more quickly.
Of what these goals are. For example, the goal number 1 is to apply approaches to foster the identification of and development of and access to more treatments. The second is to enable all people to contribute to and benefit from translational science. The third is to accelerate translation by addressing both scientific and operational challenges. The fourth is to advance research and operations that cut across translational science, things like data science, training, policy development, etc. And then the last is to work together as stewards for advancing translational sciences. So we're really excited that that the input that we received has very nicely encompassed these kinds of goals that we have to set forth for the next 5 years. And I look forward to finalizing this plan and sending it out to you as soon as it's finalized. And so with that, I think I'll stop there and see if there are any questions or how we can follow up with any of those questions. So Penny, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. And if people have any questions, please type them into the Q&A box, and then we can just answer them live. Why don't we start with one question I have here for Andy Kelly, and that's, how will a budget decrease impact NCATS?
I mean, ultimately, we plan for all things until we receive the budget, and so that can include an increase and a decrease, and it largely is remaining flexible and scaling, right? So we really want to focus on those priorities that Joni mentioned, and ensure that we are hitting those kind of those key priorities, and it just may mean that things that are, we may get less, one or two less than we may have originally wanted, but it's ultimately about being able to scale up, scale down, be flexible.
Sounds like that takes a lot of planning, Andy.
It's a lot of planning, yes. The planning process is definitely a multi-year process, just because of the timelines, the review process that goes into everything, and so we do take a lot of time to make sure that everything is well planned for any scenario, whether that be up or down.
Okay, thank you. Question for Joni. I've heard the new NIH director talk about a significant priority for her bringing clinical research into community settings. Do you have any thoughts about how the CTSAs will factor into that agenda?
Oh, that's such a great question. I do have lots of thoughts about how the CTSAs could fit in that agenda. I think it's interesting that the idea is to really be thinking about how we can move into some of that clinical areas, but focusing more on primary care through her vision. And it's kind of twofold. One is sort of thinking about how we can work across networks and bring more of that, more of our research findings into clinical care, and perhaps even work with those communities in primary care settings to bring them into the research settings as well. So it's kind of twofold there. But the other side of it as well is how we can engage on the data side, and thinking about electronic health record usage, and those are two areas I think that are real strengths of the CTSA program. So I think there's I'm excited about the potential and the opportunity here. Obviously, we'll see how these plans unfold for the director, but I certainly expect to be a large part of those plans, and look forward to working with the CTSA community to talk more about how we can also help bring those plans to light. I would also mention too, it's a lot of the work that we do within NCATS is in the clinical side. So it's the CTSA program, I think, primarily that has a lot to to contribute here. I also think there are other areas like the rare disease clinical research network space as well that could also contribute. And perhaps there are opportunities to identify areas where we can bring the rare disease awareness into primary care as well. And then I guess lastly, I'll say, with Dr. Bertagnoli's vision, this is really a prime opportunity for us to explore areas where NCATS can synergize and adopt and adapt to that way of thinking, and then really help to optimize that vision. So I think there's lots of opportunities where we will be able to work with our communities to help identify those areas most robustly. But I'm certainly looking forward to contributing to that vision and working with the CTSA community and doing more of what we've been doing. What's exciting too is that the CTSA community has been working a lot in this space with primary care networks through the PBRNs, through federally qualified health centers, through community health centers, et cetera. So there's a lot of experience, I think, that the CTSAs can bring to the table.
Great. We have a couple more questions. Here's one. Dr. Rutter, the recommended NCATS FY25 budget doesn't keep pace with inflation, which is disappointing. What would you and your talented colleagues do with increased funding above this recommendation?
Oh, thank you. Yes, you're right. It does not keep pace with inflation. So the response that Andy gave just a minute ago is really important in that we're sort of ready to address these scenarios, and we have the ability in how we think about what we can do to be sort of like a thermostat. We can adjust down if that's what the budget dictates. But as your question is asking, what about adjusting up, which I think is certainly more exciting. So with the same flexibilities that we have to adjust down, we have those same flexibilities to adjust up. And obviously we have a lot more freedom of movement when we're able to do that. So some of those areas I think that we have a really big opportunity to weigh in on is the area of artificial intelligence and machine learning. And we are technically ready to maneuver quite a bit in this space. And with the work that the CTSAs have done in this space already through programs like the Clinical Data to Health program that launched the National Clinical COVID Cohort Collaborative, as well as the ENACT program, this has really set the stage for us to be primed for a lot of the work that's being conducted in this space. So we're technically ready to do that. So obviously this is an area where we would be able to move quite rapidly in and transitioning more from the COVID space more into the clinical areas. And we're starting to do a little bit about that, but we can do certainly more if there are more opportunities in the budget that would allow that. We're exploring other spaces that could also help us in the quantum areas and that artificial intelligence algorithm development area. So we're really, I think, technically primed to move forward in that space. And I think we should be at the table as part of the healthcare ecosystem in the research that we can be conducting, making sure that our work in the AI space is transparent, it's fair, it's robust, it mitigates bias, etc. I think that's why we need to be at the table in enabling and moving forward in the space of AI. Obviously, there are other areas where we can move forward in terms of predictive modeling, which is also a fairly new space that NCATS has been working in for the last several years, but now we're moving into more robust models and bringing in data science to be combined with the predictive modeling, the tissue chips, and the 3D bioprinting that we can do. I think an exciting area for this is really in the rare disease space, where we can work with patient communities to identify human cell-based models that will better predict rare diseases. We know that many of those models, many of those rare diseases do not have animal models that are at the ready that can be used to help us move forward in the translational pipeline and finding potential therapeutics. And this provides us a way to really push those things forward. Here's another area where we are very well primed to dial that up, so to speak. And so that's one of those areas. And then I think a few more I'll just pick on, since I have the floor and we're dialing up these areas. I think it's very exciting in the space of gene therapy and gene editing. NCATS is leading the way in some of these programs along with our other NIH colleagues to push these ideas forward in how to establish the gene therapy delivery protocols so that we can essentially facilitate and help navigate the regulatory process for the development of these kinds of new therapeutics. And I think we have an opportunity to not just lead in the space of developing those therapeutics and establishing the delivery modalities that could be working very well, but we also have an opportunity to be thinking about how we need to move into the clinical space and do clinical trials and establish training paradigms in that clinical space to prepare ourselves for the next generation of those kinds of clinical trials that will be needed for those new therapeutic modalities. Gene editing, gene therapy, antisense oligonucleotides, more sort of biologically relevant focused types of interventions. At the same time, we're going to still be pushing a lot on our small molecule development. That's certainly an area where we know very well. And so continuing to establish that, but sort of grow more of the biological side. And then I think along those same lines in terms of therapeutics, we have an opportunity to kind of push and explore in this idea of the idea that there's 5% of therapeutics out there for the diseases that we know about. And that's a big space. It's probably not all that it's just a matter of time and pushing things forward. It's probably also that there's space in the biology area that we haven't been able to drug before. There's kind of the undruggable biological space. And I think NCATS is also primed and ready to have an opportunity to explore what that undruggable biological space is, even more so than we already are. We have a program out now, and we'll be exploring some of these areas, but our ability to dial that up, I think, would be very helpful to push those boundaries even more. And then lastly, I think I'll just talk about, I may have said lastly before, but I'll say lastly one last time. And that is thinking about training and expanding our internships and fellowships and career development programs for translational science. I think this is a big need across the board. A lot of the reason is because of the things I've just mentioned. The exciting areas and opportunities that we're working in are going to require workforce development and career opportunities for people in these fields and training up the next generation. So I think those are also areas that I think we have an opportunity to, in the area of dialing up, that would be another area that I would like to explore a little bit further. I'll stop there. I could keep going, but I'll stop there.
Thank you, Joni. It's 1:32. Do you have time for one last question, or do you want to wrap up?
I'm happy to do one more question if we have it.
Okay. All right. Last question. This is with regards to the CTSA awards. Seems that the priority is funding UM1s and K-12 programs with less emphasis on funding T32s. Will this trend continue into fiscal year 2025?
So for the UM1s, I think what we have seen and what our models have shown is that we are not actually decreasing the training programs. We're actually seeing an increase in the training slots. So there is a blog that Mike Kurilla had posted in his Ansible not too long ago. I want to say it's October. And I think that would be if we can find that blog and perhaps put it in the chat, that would be a good sort of explanation of how we're seeing that model is playing out, that we're actually are seeing an increase in the training slots. So hopefully that will continue to be true. And that's what our models have predicted.
There you have it. Joni, you want to close out?
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you so much for your questions. If we didn't get to something and you still have them, please use our QR codes here or our emails.
Visit https://ncats.nih.gov/about/our-staff /SEIDELS to read Steve Seidel's biography and professional interests.
You can contact Steve Seidel, or you can contact our stakeholder listserv, and we will reach out to you and follow up.
Steve Seidel's email address is seidels@mail.nih.gov. To sign up for the NCATS stakeholder listserv, visit https://list.nih.gov/CGI-BIN/subed1 equals NCATS_stakeholders &A equals 1.
So please stay in touch, and please look out for our finalized strategic plan that we hope will be rolling out shortly after our May Council meeting. So with that, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
Follow NCATS on X, formerly known as Twitter, using the handle @NCATS_NIH_gov and search for #NCATS. Visit the NCATS Facebook page at https://www.facebook.com/ncats.nih.gov. Follow NCATS on LinkedIn at https://www.linkedin.com/company/nih-NCATS and on YouTube at https://youtube.com/NCATS Media.